Hello everyone, this is the video of Legal Studies class 12 unit 2nd and the topic is law of contract. And under the law of contract today what we will be discussing, that is consent. That is one of the principles of the contract, that is consent. So what does it mean, consent? Consent is something like that if someone approaches you and asks you that he is going on a trip and he wants you also to go with him. Well, and there is certain amount that you need to share, that is the cost of that trip. Okay, and you said yes, I want to go with you and I am ready to pay the amount, the cost of the trip. So you have given the consent. As you said yes, that is your consent. Okay, so we will see what are the provisions of the consent and what are the technical parts of the consent. That is simple explanation, but the technical one we will check. So let's check it out. As defined under section 13 of the Indian Contract Act, two or more persons are said to consent when they agree upon the same thing in the same sense. Well, as we have discussed in the example that I cited just now, that is two persons. It could be more than two but not less than two. So there has to be two persons, and the proposal that person A asked you, you just gave your consent. You said yes, so that is the consent. And with the same sense, you also interested in going on trip. Okay, so that is consent. Further, section 14 defines free consent, as consent is said to be free when it is not caused by. So in order to understand section 14, you have to understand the certain provisions, and that is regarding the free consent. Check out the provision, that will make you understand it better. The first condition of a free consent is there shouldn't be coercion or force. Coercion is defined under the section 15. What does it mean? That again take the same example. If a person came to you and said that he is going on trip and he wants you to go with him a trip, and if you won't go with him, he will beat you, he will do something wrong or damage you by any means. So he just forced you to go with him on trip. So that is not a free consent. You have given the consent under the coercion, under the force. So that is not a free consent and it is not valid. So it has to be free from such coercion. It has to be free, means you should say yes on your own, not influenced by anything or by some other external force. The next point is undue influence, which is defined under section 16 of the Indian Contract Act. It means, see, there is a person whom you regard too much, maybe your teacher, and you know that you cannot say him no. In this sense, if your teacher or your elder brother or your father asks you to do something which is not of your interest, okay, and because of that influence, as you give the regard, you do something, again that is not a free consent. You did something because of undue influence, and the person who asked you to do that, maybe your elder brother or teacher or father or any such person, he knows that you are not interested in that thing. Even then he was just taking undue advantage of his position. So in this case, again it is invalid or void contract. Okay, so it is not a free consent. Now the next provision is fraud. Fraud means what? If someone intentionally come to you and ask something like that, I am selling this car. Okay, I am the owner of this car and selling this car, and this car is worth of 5 lakhs rupees, but I am in dire need of money, so I am selling this car in merely 1 lakh rupees. So pay me 1 lakh rupees and take this car. You became happy that the car worth of 5 lakhs and you are getting only in 1 lakh rupees, and you paid that. And later on you came to know that that car doesn't belong to that person from whom you have bought. So this is fraud. So this is not a valid contract. Next one is misrepresentation. What does it mean? As the word suggests, it is something like that, giving the wrong information. Understand it with an example. If someone approaches you and said that I have bought a property and value of that property is worth 1 lakh rupees, but since there is a planned, as government announced, a shopping mall in that area, so the value of that property is going to be increased exponentially. But I am needed money, so I want to sell that property merely in 1 lakh, and you just bought that, but there was no as such plan of making shopping mall and all, so he just misrepresented the fact in order to sell his property. Okay, so that is misrepresentation. And there is barely difference between fraud and misrepresentation, because without fraud misrepresentation is not possible. Guilty mind, so intention is bad, so both are though different but interlinked. And fraud can be independent but misrepresentation cannot, because without fraud misrepresentation is not possible. Okay, now the last point of this topic, that is mistake. So if there is a mistake regarding the understanding of the things, so both the parties may have some misunderstanding and did some mistake unknowingly, then that contract is void. For example, A approached B with a box, and he had been told that there are certain amount of gold in the box worth of 2 lakh rupees, and hence A contracted with B that this is the box, though I didn't open by the time, but some of my relatives who supposed to be trustworthy said that there is gold inside this box and I want to sell, so if you are interested you can buy this. So okay, fine. So when you open the box, the gold that you found, that is worth of merely 50,000. So in this case it is mistake, because even A doesn't have the information regarding the amount of the gold that is inside the box, because it was locked. So it is a mistake that can be made void. So this is the example of mistake. But one thing more that you need to pay attention, there shouldn't be any bad intention. There has to be lack of knowledge. Okay, because if it is done intentionally, then it will be the case of fraud. Now come on the last point of this topic, that is voidability of agreements without free consent. What does it mean? When consent to an agreement is caused by coercion, fraud or misrepresentation, the agreement is a contract voidable at the option of the party whose consent was so caused. What does it mean? That what are the provisions, what are the points regarding the void contract we have discussed, that is coercion, misrepresentation, fraud, undue influence, mistake, all these things, saying that this provision, basically voidability, saying that that is up to the parties. After knowing the fact, if still you are ready to continue that contract, want to make that contract valid, then it's up to you, up to your choice. You can do that. And when you, after knowing all the facts, you said yes and want to continue, then it becomes the valid contract. Okay, so this is the story of consent, that is one of the provisions of or principles of contract. So this is all for this video. As you understood, I believe, the meaning and concept of consent. See you in next video.